The Bible. Is it hard to understand?
When it comes to reading the Bible, the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that this is the Word of God.
The seals have been broken, and the truth is here.
And when we go throughout the scriptures, when we go throughout extra biblical records, we find that the language that God employed, that He used to create the heavens and the earth, was the Hebrew language.
Christ said, I came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But yet no one, no religious leader, no religious church out there anywhere can now identify the 12 tribes of Israel. Can we? God is quite simple, but it seems as if man makes understanding Him hard.
What are those mysteries?
The truth of your book and the truth will make you free. The Hebrew and Bible Academy, you're invited. That's right, brothers and sisters. The Hebrew and Bible Academy, you are invited. We're going into week 3 of this Hebrew and Bible Academy. I'm Elder Ricard Shaw, the Gathered of Christ Church, here with your weekly Patreon update, okay? We're going to do something a little different today. When we go over to Patreon, I'm going to just open up the calls, and especially for those who are in the Academy. I know that sometimes after the lesson, you may have questions on any particular point within the lesson, and sometimes there's not enough time to answer those. So if you are in the Academy and you have questions concerning the lessons we did for week 1 or week 2, that's right. We're opening the line so that you can ask those questions during our Patreon update. Okay, that's number 1. Okay, I know you're happy to hear that. And if you have any other questions out there in concern of the lessons we've gone over, especially what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks with the influx of what they would call a migrant crisis, you can call in 515-605-9327 during our Patreon segment, and we can talk and see what we can do in general to come up with some level of solution and get guidance on what the Most High said we must do in these end times concerning what's going on right now in real time prophetically. That's one thing I've always respected within the church, this church in particular, the Gathering of Christ Church, is because this wasn't just a place or a teaching that we can just get together, on holy days and just come together and, do the regular routine that you would normally or generally find in churches. One thing I respect about how the Most High organically created this church, if I can use the word, is that this church was created out of prophecy. It was created out of understanding what was going on real time and really keeping the people in the earth abreast prophetically, looking at what's going on real time through a prophetic eye, connecting the dots together. And that's something that I would say was unique in itself in comparison to what we can find in modern day religion, which is truly agenda driven. Okay. And that's why I thank the Most High for this church. Okay. It came out of a necessity to show people what's going on prophetically. And now what? Here we are. Okay. So I'm going to open up the lines because there's so many things being thrown at people at one time. Right. And it's up to us to make sense of it. So to get brothers and sisters, on board to understand what the first step is, right? When coming into the word, the understanding, what steps can you take initially, to actually begin your journey towards this kingdom, right? Why? Because there's so many things being thrown at us, right? You got the sicknesses. When our children are born, the doctors and hospitals, what they're suggesting, whether or not it's right or wrong, right? We got the schools and the agendas on the school. We have what? We have we have so many things Food prices going up. All of these things going on at one time, hitting us at one time. And what's happening is Satan have thrown everything against the proverbial wall in order to cause confusion. So brothers and sisters just need to know, okay, what must I do without getting caught up in all the inundation, with all the information coming at me at one time, with the stress of my life, what's going on with family? Where do I begin? Step one. And folks, that's where this church come in at. No one, brothers and sisters, you will exhaust yourself to total destruction, focusing on everything that's coming at you at one time. It's too much for any of us, right? Because that's what the enemy threw out at the end day. All of these things, what? Wars, rumors of wars, diseases, family issues, nation against nation. And then above all of that, at the very end, the people would be what? Confused. And through that confusion, they what? The people would not observe or understand that we're at the consummation of times, which are the end of days. Right? So let me tell you, it's too much to try to quantify everything the devil is throwing at you. The Most High have made it simple. Get your questions answered. And above all, control what you can control by getting your house in order. And that comes with ghost busting. No matter how hard that might seem, when it comes to making hard decisions with those who have attached themselves to you, family or whatever the case, it's time to make the tough decisions to make sure your house, the house you live in, is a safe space for you and the Holy Spirit. If the children are going off and they have been initiated into Satan's agenda of destruction, do as thou will, you must make a choice with them or fall with them. And it's the same with anyone you may be attached to. And I'm going to be talking about that today on Patreon. I'm going to open up the calls and we're going to just have a serious heart-to-heart discussion, right? His serious heart-to-heart discussion on what's going on. And what I'm going to do is through the Bible make sense of a lot of what people out there might be confused about. Okay? Like for instance, and this is what I'm going to talk about today, right? Oh, before I talk about that, let me share some good news that ran across my feed. I think that it's a positive when men recognize that we have an image problem. Now, believe it or not, there's a lot of negative that's being thrown at this particular TikTok video where brothers said, we're going to come together all together and put on a suit. And I want to know why some people deem this negative when men are making a concerted effort to change their image. There's only two images: the image of God or the image of the beast. See? And if these men can now do on the inside what they are preparing to show forth on the outside, that alone would put pressure on the rest of our community. This is how pressure is applied. Now, some people might feel negative that these brothers put on suits. Oh, they're fronting. They're just acting out. They're not really that clean. Why? Why are people giving this a negative connotation? You know why? Because it's forcing those who are watching to change their image. And they know that you must come a certain type of way when you step to a brother who's about something. You would rather have what? A Build-A-Bear, someone out there struggling or the other, right? Because if you get that, then you don't have to step yourself up and find that's right, the qualifications to be with the man who has his stuff together. And I believe this is what that represents. This is the first step in our brothers recognizing we have an image problem. If you have an image problem, the media can use a negative image as a form of demonization before destroying you. Politically, throughout time, this is how governments were able to attack people, by calling them barbarians. I applaud this. Let's look at it just a little bit. Let's check it out. Now, I don't agree with all the colors, but, serious first step. Got the young men out there. Let me tell you something. The enemy is afraid when they see something like this. You know why? Because this took effort and organization. This in of itself took effort and organization outside of their agendas, outside of and it happened without the enemy. The enemy had no power in stopping this or influencing this. This came out of the need, out of necessity, to clean up our image. Everyone out there is talking about, well, okay, the communities are destroyed or whatever the case because men don't lead, whatever the case is. Okay, now men are making an effort, right? What I would like to see outside of just Judah, the men, I would like to see the daughters of Zion naturally make a public image proclamation such as this. Such as this, with no men involved. All you sisters out there, and I'm not talking about the church in general because we know the sisters wear modest, because these people aren't in particular in a church. They realize on the outside of our religious constructs or our beliefs, outside of what we believe, there's an overall image problem that have soiled the children of God before the world. And that alone justify these people coming over here and others looking down on us and treating us less than when they come into our communities. The Most High is doing something. Speaking of the Most High is doing something, I have from a good source, right? I applaud those brothers. The Most High is doing something. I have from a good source that this so-called migrant crisis, what they call asylum seekers, speaking of organization, organized, isn't as spontaneous in responding to a human, what you would call a human rights issue, as the politicians in the news are making it. Because asylum seekers would have us believe these were people who are just utterly decimated through warfare or whatever the case is, and need what? And need refuge from carnage or death. And the refuge should be provided through the United States. That is what they have us believe when these politicians use the word asylum seekers. Years ago, it was called illegal immigrants. Still giving the people who are trying to escape, a tough living in their own homes. Still giving them a negative connotation. I believe that all of these people are being moved around like pieces on a chessboard. Okay? But I have from a good source, okay? I have from a good source that this is more organized than they're telling you, than they're telling any of us. That some of these people coming over here are being told when they come to the United States, don't worry about anything. Even if you have to sleep on the floor for a few days or a few weeks, we have a long-term plan for you that you will never regret. We have housing for you. We have a whole community for you. We have centers for your children. You just have to go through the rough patch. Even if you have to sleep on the ground for a little bit, we will spin it in a way that will allow you to be what? Fast-tracked for you and your family to get a piece of the American dream. Trust us. And I have this from a very credible source. That what we're being told on this side, allegedly, isn't what they're being told on the other side of the border, not just by those who are allowing them in, but the governments who are organizing along with it also. Their own governments. And guess what? It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Why? No government on the earth wants to be seen as negligent against its own citizenry. Okay? So they wouldn't put their people out there unless they knew something positive would come out of it, not just for that government, but for their own people. If it was a humanitarian issue, then you have the UN for that, where what? Where they can get the support they needed in their own country. Okay? If there was a real humanitarian crisis, as they're claiming, what's wrong with America sourcing these particular countries under the packages, which are what? Financial aid, like other countries, $500 million or $20 billion that it will end out if it goes as they're saying in a few years for them. Could be worth how much in resources in these people's own country? If this is a humanitarian crisis, the only thing you would have to do is take the money that you're claiming that's coming out of taxpayers' money here in America and actually put it in financial aid packages for the people who wouldn't have to travel anywhere and get what? The humanitarian needs met in their own country. They would rather do that, believe it or not. So that's how you know it's not what they're saying. But what they're doing means total destruction for the inner cities. See, this is why the money from the powers that be allegedly is well spent here in America, because there's an agenda here that they need against the service class, which are the inner cities. So this is how they'll spin it under humanitarian crisis on either side, whether it be Republican or Democrat. Fair use.
Hi, everyone. Mike Pace here. Thanks so much for joining us here as we continue to bring you top stories and headlines from across the country. And one of the big top stories that we have been following for several weeks is the crisis of migrants that is happening in New York City. And right now, let's go out.
Now, they say it's a crisis in New York City now. Now, you mean to tell me the people who had a crisis in their own country, okay, if they're spending it the way they're claiming, why take someone else's crisis and make it your crisis? If there isn't some higher plan behind this. If you can't take care of the homeless people and the unemployed in your own country, why take on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people from another country and create a more dire crisis than it was before they came? America just came out of crisis, what they call COVID, right? I'm going to show y'all something in a moment.
To the Big Apple. That is where we find Fox News' Brian Yennis with the latest on a situation that happened over the weekend with arrests being made of migrants and the latest update from Governor Kathy Hochul this morning. Brian.
Mike, good afternoon from a rainy New York City today. But yes, New York Governor Kathy Hochul just wrapped up a press conference in which she said that the state is now going to call about 150 new National Guardsmen to help with the state's migrant crisis. Now,
100 and what? 100 and what?
National Guardsmen to help with the state's
What's the number?
today. But yes, New York Governor Kathy Hochul just wrapped up a press conference in which she said that the state is now going to call about 150 new National Guardsmen to help with the state's migrant crisis.
That's military. To help with the crisis. Now, who think 150 National Guardsmen? It's just 150 National Guardsmen. Because if anything happened to any of these 150, one of them, then reinforcements are necessary. See? See, they give you that little 150 number so that Americans don't stand up and understand that what? Posse comitatus is getting violated, where a standing army is not supposed to operate within the borders, only if it's a serious emergency like a flood or something. But now they're using this under any level of crisis, even if it's allegedly engineered. So you look at that number and say, 150, that's just to help out, or whatever the case is. During the so-called riots, which some allegedly said there was a lot of political driving behind that too. And then we recognize in order to stop the looting, they had to have the National Guards out there getting American citizens used to the optics, getting Americans used to accepting military as a norm. That's abnormal, folks. So you create a crisis, then the crises are paid by the American people. And then on top of that, out of the American people's tax money, and don't forget, folks, the more they spend, the more all your products goes up. Everything, your food, that's why your food is so high, your rent is so high. The more the government spend, it adds to what? The inflation. The more things are inflated through inflation by pressing the treasury, the more your everyday living things that you need goes up. Right? That's why your bills are high now. That's why here it is, you got a bag of groceries this big and you're paying $150. Now, they're doing the same thing here. Taxing our military. Right? Think about this. Who would do this to their own citizens? And I don't want to hear about this stuff that this is a Democrat or Republican thing. Okay? See, I can see in between how either side is playing hot potato. because the red states, the Republicans who claiming that, oh, migration, the illegal immigrants, they are hiring the people who are coming over the borders. In the red states, when you go behind the counter, you don't see nothing but what they would call asylum seekers or immigrants working for them. And they're willing to do this because why? It's all about the profit margin. I can pay them less and they'll complain less, and I'll have less on my side when it comes to my commitment to them as employees. I don't have to give them retirement packages. See? They're happy just to be in America making anything, even if it's minimum wage. And that's helping the bottom line for a lot of these corporations and private companies. So I don't want to hear nothing about the Republicans don't want this, when the Republicans are also, right, even though they're claiming publicly they're against it, they're benefiting and profiting from what? Low wages they pay. That's right, the immigrants. Right? I'm an American citizen. We have children. There's a standard that they must keep when it comes to hiring our people who fought in wars and built the country. So you can't pay us just anything. And now they're saying, well, okay, we understand we can't pay you anything, but we can pay these people anything. They'll be grateful to get less than half of what we are required to pay the service class. And that leads us here, and I'm going to open up the lines in a moment. That leads us here to what we'll be talking about. The World Economic Forum. We've been hearing these words like diversity, multiculturalism. And we thought that was an American politician thing in our communities that can actually help the poor who suffered building the country when they said diversity. When they said what? We're going to help black and brown people. We thought that was an American politician thing to have politicians actually hear and understand the plights of our people. Folks, they lied. The whole concept of diversity didn't come from America at all. It came out of the World Economic Forum. And this is why I want to put this out there. We connect the dots. The Most High have allowed us to do this since the beginning of this ministry, and we'll never stop. You have to know the trick words. Diversity. Diversity isn't good for any people. For any people. I'm going to show you why. I'm going to show you what I'm going to be diving into while opening up the calls on the other side of with Patreon. Okay? And I thank you all for your presence, being here before the Sabbath. It's a pleasure having you here. And I'm glad I have these few moments to talk to you, to help you understand how serious our current state is as a people. And I'm speaking of people in general who believe in God and believe in Christ and understand that we are under assault. Political assault, biological assault, every assault imaginable. Okay? Psychological assault. We have to understand when they say diversity, that's warfare. What is diversity?
Diversity.
What is diversity?
Diversity.
They made us believe that diversity is the equality that we deserve or we should have coming out, that came out of the civil rights struggle. That's the trick they've played on our people. But when you look at diversity, the state of being diverse, variety, there was a considerable diversity in the style of the reports. Now, I don't have no problem with that definition of diversity. But here's the definition that we all must focus on, because this is the definition that comes out of the World Economic Forum. And I'm going to show you it comes out of their packaging for the world social engineering. And what we're seeing right now throughout the earth in disrupting governments, misplacing people, it's all a part of of control, the Marxist control that they will bring in the New World Order with. Diversity don't mean that they're going to treat black people equally than white people. Let me make that clear. Okay, we got to get off this kick that we need to be treated equal as the controlling class. That's ridiculous. That will never happen. When we were in position and ruled Israel for a time, there was no equality. There were privilege for those who was down with the program. There was Edomites that David had in his army, operating with strategy and all that when you look into the scriptures. So yes, we always interacted with other nations. They were in our armies and all that. But there's a pecking order. We have to get off this thing in believing that there will ever be any political agendas that would move this forward to a degree where white people and black people are equal. It doesn't make sense. Okay? Power isn't easily relinquished. And there's no one that's going to put you on the same par with them. And it never happened. When the Persians ruled during the time of Darius, that's when the Iranians ruled. There was no equality. You got down or you lay down. Y'all know the story of 300. The story of the 300 Spartans who fought valiantly but fell against one of the greatest armies ever assembled. It was valiant, but they died. Okay? There's no such thing as equality. These are all trick words sent out there by Satan to make you believe that there's an opportunity for any of us to become equal. There's no such thing as being fair. There is no fairness in love or war. It have never been fair. Don't ever take on this thing, well, this is not fair. Life isn't fair. They're playing on your emotions. We have to deal with the reality of the matter. And when we deal with these emotions, they pull on our emotional strings and by there deceive us into our own demise. Okay? I don't need no equality. Okay? Right? I don't need no fairness. Okay? What I need is the opportunity to advance naturally within my own realm, starting with family, starting with children, starting with making sure the legacy from one family is handed down to the next. And when that's threatened, then guess what? That's the war that needs to happen. That's the war that needs to happen. That's when the conflict is necessary. When someone is now coming into your space, disrupting your right to exist. Okay? And by taking on diversity and all these others, we have allowed them in our space. Here's diversity. The practice of quality of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations, etc. The practice of quality of including what we would normally as what? As those who believe in God and are family oriented, what we would normally resist with our own lives. So inclusion means we must accept what God does not. We must accept our own destruction. We must accept what's against our traditional values. And we must allow them to teach our children to be included in degradation and demoralizations. Speaking of that, what am I going into when I open up the calls? And I want those who are in the academy to call in if you have any questions based on our last few lessons. And don't worry about it. If you want to be in the academy, go to historytimes.org. We can include you and make sure you get all the links to catch up by week 3. We're going into the promised seed this coming week. All right. Pathways to inclusion. Learning from the COVID-19 policy response. Now, this was November 22. Now, why is this so important for me? This is important for me because I've been talking about the image of the beast, the mark of the beast, the path to the mark of the beast publicly since about 2008, 2009. I've been talking about the real agenda is to lead the world into a cashless society, a controlled Marxist world where you cannot operate on the grid unless you take a new spending system that will be what? You got it, folks. Transhumanism. You must accept the chip in your brain or in your hand, and it's coming. So some people might ask, well, what does the World Economic Forum have to do with COVID-19? Well, when you go into this and you go over it, I wanted to go into this because I didn't want to talk about the disease. I've been following the World Economic Forum for a long time. When they were under what they would call, years ago, sometimes Alex Jones talked about it, the Bilderberg organization. Under the Bilderberg, they would go there in Germany or go into, Eastern Europe, or Europe in particular. They would find different countries and then discuss what? The agendas for the world from one year to the next. High politicians, as well as sometimes entertainers. Oprah Winfrey went to one of the Bilderberg meetings years ago. Barack Obama was at a few of those. Some religious leaders, some African religious leaders and others come to this forum to make sure they can have the whole world lockstep into the next phase for Satan's agenda, allegedly, or the world's agenda. But I'm speaking from a biblical standpoint. How do we get there? Because this is not just talking about, when you look at the World Economic Forum, a disease in general. It talks about more than that. It talks about infrastructure. It talks about towards more inclusive post-pandemic policies. Most inclusive post-pandemic policies. Inclusive? So that means I must accept you funneling money through one of these diversity groups that's against my morals, right? That's against my traditional values. But people can't even recognize that. They see these words and don't understand. This is talking about how they're going to administer and how they're going to distribute, a better word, money, and who they're going to distribute it through to bring in their agendas. 5 pandemic inventions. Now, this is what they were looking for coming out of the pandemic. Employment support. Social safety nets. Public capital expenditure. Remote working. Remote learning. Right? Now, you wonder why it showed how they would do this, but think about this. If you get people used to remote working and remote learning, then there'll be less pushback when they do the diversity work in moving other people from other countries into these buildings that are no longer used for what they used to be used for pre-pandemic. Now, the churches, schools, recreational centers, all those things we were used to utilizing for our community will no longer be a necessity now that they have trained people to get adjusted to staying in their homes for work and or school. So you're thinking, okay, man, this sounds like it was like pre-planned to some degree. Who knows? You can't draft something like this in a couple of minutes. Who knew that something was going to happen out of nowhere and catch us all by surprise and all these others? And how do they conveniently have all the plans post any crisis? I'm just asking. Remote learning, lessons for inclusive economic policy making. That word inclusive is a trick word, because now what it's talking about is the people handpicked to run their agenda. That's a part of these groups. And they'll put these people over all of the money distribution and all the programs for our inner cities. And these were the same people who were trying to trigger us to go out to protest. Notice it was the diversity people, right? The inclusive people were over all these programs as if there were meetings from the outside of us, right? Build smarter, customized, well-publicized social protections. Expand reskilling, upskilling, and adult learning for all. Adult learning for all? Adult learning? Reskilling, upskilling, and adult learning? Folks, this is what? This is reprogramming. This sounds like reprogramming to me, doesn't it? Right? You know, the whole term, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I mean, so you know we're setting our ways and our traditions. Oh, no. Oh, no. We need some adult learning for you all. Things is about to change for you. The world you have become accustomed to understanding how it works no longer exists post-pandemic. Ensure remote working promotes equality. Now, equality has nothing to do with us. Equality have, for every reason, to justify everyone else they'll put in place to help crush us economically. Don't forget, these talking points are from the World Economic Forum. So understand, sisters, who are the highest evicted right now after being promised that you will have what? College debt relief and all that. Keep in mind, don't be surprised if everything that you're dealing with was thought about well before those elections. Don't be surprised if they knew the fallout at the end of this when they begin to bring everyone in to replace your positions in the corporate world. And I'll say sisters in particular, because brothers have learned how to more so cope and adjust after being what? After being separated from the corporate world to some degree, to a degree where we had to what? We had to be able to survive outside of the corporate, I would say, stiff arm. They've been given black men in particular, only to give sisters positions. So we had to adjust. We've already begun to pivot, knowing that they were what? That they were seeking to replace us a long time ago. The first replacement in general wasn't with the other nations. It was with our own women. Their first plan was to replace us in any area in which we can have financial upward mobility with our women, and that would cause a cataclysm within our homes, and they knew it. But men begin to adjust and say, you know what? I can't depend on that. I have to find my own hustle, my own way. I have to depend on something outside just a job to survive. And we started doing our own businesses and all of that. We've been pivoting for a long time. And a lot of sisters, I'm going to tell you, a lot of sisters been pivoted, okay, off the corporate world. But I'm saying the sisters that in particular that are being evicted and all these others have been blindsided. This was the last, these issues they're dealing with were the last things they thought they would actually deal with after supporting that administration. But as you can see here, folks, a lot of this stuff, they understood what would happen. They need places to hold their new service class. Their new service, or what you would call slave wage class. They can't hold us in jail like they used to. So in prison reform and all that, where we were working for almost nothing, they can't do it no more. But with the prison reform comes what? Well, who are we going to have to work for almost nothing? We'll just release them in prison and do what? We'll have them kill themselves off, or they'll just die naturally off in their communities with no help while we replace them, while they're getting replaced. Right? So they went from prison reform, and they told us prison reform, we don't care about no prison reform. How many of our people, a small population of our people, are criminals? There's no policy benefiting us. And I don't know why we even listen to that crap. We don't care about no prison reform. All of our people aren't criminals. If you want to talk about prison reform or criminality, well, let's talk about people who would steal a whole country and destroy people only to name the people who are doing anything to survive criminals. But I digress. Invest in educational content, talent, and infrastructure. So this is what they're doing now. They are investing in educational content, they're getting new talent, and they're building a new infrastructure. See, I connect the dots for you, brothers and sisters, right? World Economic Forum. Look at this. It's lockstep. One thing, you go there every week and they're still talking about all this other stuff. Here's what to know about the new Parola variant. World Economic Forum, folks. How the cost of living crisis affects young people around the world. See? Look at this. They have every piece of what's going on in the world talked about and discussed, legislation rolled out with the countries picking it up. Folks, some would say these unelected power brokers, these powerful people are really dictating legislation throughout the world. They would have us believe it's our elected officials. But we need to look at whether or not these people who are pushing things in the World Economic Forum are respected on a higher regard than even presidents of countries. Who knows? Right? And everywhere you go, you see what? 666. The mark of the beast, strategic intelligence, right? Right? So, then let me show you. Look at this. Here's a new package that came out 2020 during the time when everyone was dealing with all the other stuff. Right? Right after the election. Diversity, equity, and inclusion 4.0. A toolkit for leaders to accelerate social progress in the future of work. You want to know where all your tax money will be actually distributed to control your communities? It was in the packages years ago, folks. Let me tell you, I'm going to show you this. I'm going to download this right here. Let me download it for you. I'm going to download it right here. Download it. I have it downloaded here. Their plan was to redistribute your money under these certain groups, these minority groups that have nothing to do with us, and they would become the new taskmasters over our people in the cities. And they don't care about your religion. They don't care about your religious get-togethers because they already fixed that. They already fixed that. For all the religious leaders and others who was touting their talking points and was getting behind their program all the way from 2020 all the way through the post, they don't expect any of these churches or all that to have members living or well enough to do anything within the next few years. So they've already fixed the issue with our leaders who would normally have pushback against them. 9 times out of 10, they don't foresee these people even surviving past 3 to 4 years. They have fixed it already. So they're not going to have any resistance from the churches because the churches, their members, may have a ticking time bomb in them. So they already fixed any resistance that would come from a religious standpoint. Forget about it. They've already dealt with you. The only thing you can do is that's right. Get yourself a good funeral home director and work it out. That's all you can do. They've already fixed the future resistance that would normally come through our churches. Oh, no, they're not going to have a Martin Luther King thing happen again where now all of the churches rally. They don't have to worry about Creative Flow of Dollars or TD Jakes. Okay, they don't have to worry about them. Okay, they already got them. So there will be no religious uprising against what's already in the communities to replace and destroy anything that's left of our people. And guess who's going to be on top of it? Every program that our people must go to survive, you're going to find an inclusive or diversity person in charge. You can't finesse me with this diversity or inclusion thing. We should have never allowed people to gain constituency or status based on sexual preferences. We should have never allowed that. It was our people who allowed this. Okay, why? And I'm going to tell you why. When it comes to, just say there's a white racist family who benefited from slavery, who has nothing to do with our community, and they benefited from slavery. Just say hypothetically, just for conversation, just for the sake of this conversation, right? Let's just say there was a rich family who always benefited from our people, plantation owners, generational wealth that have been handed down from one family to the next. And it so happens that one of the children of this, just say they're white, hypothetically. This is a hypothetical. One of these children get abused amongst their people. And through that abuse, something happens where now they identify under some sexual, whatever the case might be. We didn't do that to that person. So now all they have to do is now label themselves based on their sexual persuasion, and now they are placed amongst us as a minority bloc, when we had nothing to do with this person's sexual preferences. All I know is that you got generational wealth from your family who have benefited from what? My people serving and building this country. And now you're able to operate on that side and become a taskmaster on this side too over our people as a minority. That's why I never went for that, because that's a Trojan horse. Because this person, no matter what they dealt with their family, still going to bring their racist views regardless of their sexual choices amongst our people. They're still racist. They still hate us because that's what they've learned amongst their people. And now they were able to what? Use what happened to them or their sexual preference as a what? As a Trojan horse to come in and become new overlords over our community. And the way they did it was, they didn't ask us, could they do this? They did this by attaching themselves to other people in our community who may have been abused or whatever the case, or have questions concerning their choices when it comes to sexuality. And now they had a black face, be it man or woman, to connect to as a Trojan horse to destroy those who believe in God in our communities. And this is why there's nothing left of it. Every time we look at the racist who's really controlling all of them, what do? They get out of the way and push one of their puppets, their abused puppets, in front of us to say, calm down. We'll take care of it. It's okay. Don't talk about me because it's some type of phobia and you're being phobia. And they're using our people as a shield while they have these diversity races in position, planning to destroy us within our communities. And when Black Lives Matter, when there's some type of riot, every time something happens, it's them, the racist, who don't look like us, controlling the whole thing because the money distribution are coming through them. And it's no different than what's going on with the migrants coming over here right now. They done move these people from one crisis to the next, and they distribute their money through the diversity people. So it's time for us to make a stand and separate ourselves on moral lines first. And say, well, listen, we don't want money going through diversity groups and all this. We're not a diversity group. Okay? The first thing people need to do is say, listen, we're putting our people who are morally sound and have grassroots in our community in charge of everything when it comes to money distribution within our community going forward. It's not going to black or brown people. It's not going to people based on what sexual orientation they choose. What they do behind closed doors is their business. We have nothing to do with that. Knock yourself out. But we're not going to let you allow yourself to politically assail us by getting in position to destroy us. We must delineate or separate ourselves on moral grounds first. These people don't represent us. They're immoral people, and we don't want any, based on our beliefs, we don't want any of our finances being distributed through them ever again. We want to make sure our tax dollars go directly to our particular area, period. When you go into the rural areas, when they pay taxes for property taxes, all that money go directly to the schools in that particular area. I'm going to tell you if our people had time, what they should have done. We need to get federal spending out of local schools. Okay? And bring it back to what? The money from that particular area goes directly into the school in that area, period. And it's led with a program that's indicative of the people. A program that's shaped from its community. A God-fearing religious program when it comes to how we teach our children. No federal money, no federal attachment to public schools. And I'm going to tell you, if people did this, then you would see what was really going on. If you made a stand. The money I pay will go back into our local areas. Okay? This is what people should have been thinking about instead of voting on what? Emotions, racism, being triggered through racism, emotions, and whether or not somebody had hue or melanin in their skin. They get these compromised people abused and all that and groom them like Manchurian candidates, put a suit on them to represent us before the world. And these people, they usually put put in front of us as leaders are broken. They're broken in every sense of the word. So I wanted to put that out there. Equity and diversity. We should have been fighting against this the whole time. This didn't come out of the United States. This came out of the World Economic Forum. This is how you move people around the earth, by what? Utterly, folks, what they're doing is disrupt. This is civil unrest. This is what they do. This is civil unrest. They're decimating communities under these particular agendas. A toolkit for leaders to accelerate social progress. Social progress is when our people no longer cease to have any power to do anything against these particular evildoers assailing us. And look at this. Economic world system. Look what they got. George Floyd. See? You see how you play like fiddles out there? This didn't come from the United States. This came from the World Economic Forum. Trigger you because what? We can't think outside of our emotions. They don't care about no George Floyd. Okay, they don't care about no black man dying. As far as I'm concerned, this is nothing more than a ritual celebrating the death of black men. How can you be marching for black men with no black men in charge? Utterly ridiculous. And then on top of that, have men haters in charge of the movement marching for black men. How does that look? This didn't come out of us, folks. This came out of the World Economic Forum. And look at this. Look at this. I've been following them for a long time. And look, how can we use tech to improve diversity? Why? Because why? They say there's a glitch in the facial recognition because they're mixing up the profiles of black people in particular. AI is now making all black people a suspect when it comes to facial recognition. They're saying it's a glitch, but no, we're the ones they're going to be looking for, folks. They say it's a glitch in this that black people are sometimes what? Misidentified under this multi-billion-dollar technology. Huh? It's all here, folks. It's all here. Look, it's all here. One step to the next, lockstep, including having to do something about a people who are getting evicted right now. Instead of taking that money for diversity, that money for these wars, the financial aid for wars, Ukraine, migrant crisis, why don't you just do what? Take that money and have our sisters' houses paid off so that they can live without the stress of everyday life, not knowing how they're going to be able to survive another week, worried about their housing status. But they already have a plan for that, folks. The plan for that is permanent apartments. They already have this stuff working. I told y'all this in 2014. They already have a plan. They're going to have people move into these small housing facilities that are already built as an answer. And the migrants will be living where we live. That's what's about to happen. And they're telling us that it's going to be temporary housing. It's not going to be temporary housing at all. Eventually, something is going to happen where they're going to claim it's some type of terrorist act that's going on amongst black people. And these places are going to be they're going to become holding cells. The prisons have switched right before us, and this is why they said we're going to defund the police, prison reform, because they're going to move it to something different. They've been telling us this through the World Economic Forum for years. You're going to check in and don't check out. You're going to go into these places and then you're going to come out conveniently. I got sick with the cold or something. And then everybody going to believe you got the bug, and they're going to tie it up with a bow, and here you go. That's where it's going. Sisters, those that are about to be evicted and all that, they already have a place for you. The facilities are already built in all throughout all the United States. So they're using this tent city stuff and all this stuff, these optics, so that people can scream that, no, we don't need these people on the street. What are you doing? These are all photo ops intentionally done. Intentionally done, folks, so that now we have the politicians in America who had nothing to do with a crisis in another country make laws for new housing in the United States. What they aren't telling you is the housing is to replace you. And in these places, there will be guards, there'll be policemen, there'll be immigrant guards watching the doors. And you're going to say, hold up, are we in America anymore? And they're going to tell you, don't you know? Don't you know? America died. America caught the cold. Let's go over. I'm going to open up the lines for 30 minutes. Before I open up the lines, I want to talk to my people on Patreon and come on in 515-605-9327. Call in if you want to know what to do. If you have any questions about the Academy, whatever the case is, my loyal Patreonies, you know what we do. Patreon.com/AGathering144. You are in a war. While you were looking the other way, that small constituency of people, they intentionally put people, diverse people, in high positions over your community. That was intentional while you were looking the other way. And these people are on it. These people in position, they're on it 24 hours a day. Because what? Their financial life depends on it. Okay? No matter what the crisis, they're going to come back to the table with their politicians and say, okay, we're willing to roll this out on these people. What is our next agenda? Oh, they found out about that agenda? Don't worry about it. If it's rioting, we will organize the people. If it's sickness, we will make sure they do whatever you say do. If it's housing, we'll be in position because we're going to continue to get those grants and checks of diversity to actually distinguish. I'm not distinguish, but to extinguish, the correct word, to extinguish these people. As long as the checks keep coming. And while these people are dying, they're decorating their houses, they're just chilling and kicking back because the money's flowing to destroy the children of Israel. And they don't care about it because they hate our God anyway. They relish in destroying our children and destroying our family. And only to boot get paid on top of it. Now, y'all call it they call it the World Economic Forum, but the Bible identified it as something else. The Bible identified it as something else, okay? The Bible identified it as the 10 horns. The Bible identified it as the 10 horns, which is the EU. So what's going to happen? Let me read it. Let me read it. And the 10 horns which thou sawest, Revelation 17 and 12, are 10 kings. These ain't speaking about 10 men, folks. This is speaking of the European Union. 10 European powers connected to Rome, which have received no kingdom as yet. Why didn't they receive a kingdom as of yet? Because America took their glory. America was built out of what? Out of three of the kings, three of the horns: France, Spain, and Great Britain. And they built the country out of Europe, but yet America got glory above those who were responsible for the inception of it. See? And the reason why America got the glory is because Judah was over here. That's why. The music, the culture, we created something out of nothing that catapulted America above the whole world spectrum. And the Ten Horns always hated that. They hated the fact that Judah excelled through chattel slavery and made America the light for the whole world, the moral light for the world, standing up against all injustices, like Martin, like Malcolm. We were the David to their Goliath and took all the glory. Their children wanted to dress like us. They wanted to sing like us. They wanted to be us. So the Ten Horns was like, well, hold up. How can America get glory out of us? And we built the country. We started its infrastructure. They didn't like the fact because Esau built the country, but the glory came through God's people. It always does. So then what they do? But receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So the European Economic Forum, they hide in who they are. They're the Ten Horns, EU. So, but the last hour, which is the last 7 years, they'll rule the world politically. The last hour is the last 7 years before the consummation. All power must be dissolved from all of these countries to go back to the countries who made them. Europe, the Ten Horns. And it says these have one mind, one world order, folks, and shall give their power to the beast. All of their power goes back to Satan. This is why all your products, everything you see, it's about what? Occultism. Lucifer has a hot sauce now. Lucifer has a television show. So now the glory, they're coming from behind the curtain and letting you know, that's right. They are outright Satan worshipers. And this is why they've allowed the Asians over, because the Asians have always worshiped the dragon outright without apologizing. They're Satanist. The religion of China and the religion of East India is Satanism. These shall make war with the Lamb. So it's going to be them, through their technology, planning to fight Christ in the second coming. And the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords, thank the Most High. King of kings, thank the Most High. You will lose. And they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. Even those you killed. The Bible says the dead in Christ shall rise first and meet him in the air and return back with Christ for war. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Diversity. Diversity. Inclusion. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. That's Europe. They hate America. And shall make her desolate. How did they make her desolate and naked? By showing incompetent leadership, putting incompetent leadership in position so that America can become a laughing stock around the world. That's how you make a country naked. That's how you make it bare. They could have chose anyone to be president. You know how many young people out there, you know how that galvanized America throughout the earth to see a young black man in position, even though we understand he was being utilized by the harlot also. But all in all, it stimulated the whole world to see somebody young, vibrant, in position. They could have did that again. But they want America to be seen as weak. So they chose weak leadership to represent America internationally. That's how you politically make a country weak, desolate. How do you make it desolate? By going to war and spending all of the treasury from taxpayers to a degree where there's no money left to fend off what's coming. And shall eat her flesh. That's making her bare politically and otherwise, where all the countries can come in like the walking dead and eat her alive. Decimate her, tear her apart, only to go back to their own countries when there's nothing left. Folks, all of this is the World Economic Forum, every last piece of it. The mayors of these cities have no power over this. The governors have no power over this. None of that, because you have to understand there's corporations who fund these political positions, and they're at the behest of that money. They don't care about the citizens. This isn't a true democracy. Wake up. Anytime you're living in a capitalistic society that's ran through capitalism, it's the money that talks. And the corporations are paying them to move agenda. So they sit down in these little meetings and say, well, hold up, our people need food, they need better schools and all that. And they'd be like, well, we'll give them that, we'll throw that, but we'll also throw this in that package. And they can't get this unless you allow them to accept this also. That's right, more schools and all that, but you must open up the borders and allow employment for all these people to be in the package for these schools. If you don't agree with our side, we won't allow your people to get anything. And folks, this is how politics work. Even Bill Clinton said that when he came defending himself with the 1994 crime bill. In defending himself, he said straight out, I had schools in it, I have things for the children in it, recreation centers, but Biden said that he wouldn't do it unless there's the sentences for these people would be 80, they would have to serve 85% of their sentences if they're sentenced to jail. That's how it works. Let me round it up. And shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. That war that's in the Middle East will come back to America. You heard it here since 2008, 2009, since YouTube became a thing, and you're hearing it now. America will be split into 3 parts. It has already been sold off to different countries, but they haven't told the citizens yet. I'm telling you. Go to the World Economic Forum. They'll let you know. A lot of these bridges and all that, when they started selling off all this stuff, that stuff was being sold to foreign countries. For God, our God, Ahia, have put it in their hearts to fulfill his will. So our God, folks, is allowing this. And this is why we must stay on the right side of God and be hedged through the war. Because in order for Israel to be free, the country who've celebrated Israel's demise must be judged. It ain't coming back. I even told you politically what people needed to do today if they wanted to come together and save their own communities. You think our people would do it if they're shown step by step what to do? It's over. And God have put it in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast. That's Satan. Since these people want to walk around like harlots, they want to walk around talking about they're into African spiritualism, since they want to deal with witchcraft and astrology, let me turn them over to their God. Since they want to deal with debauchery, give their bodies for nothing. They want to operate immoral and not stand against these people who've been put in position to destroy them. Let them die with their God. And that's the judgment of the Almighty on these people who have chosen a side. And guess what, folks? They have chosen the wrong side. Until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city. Is that great city. Statue of Liberty, live no longer. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. That woman, that harlot, have destroyed morality, have destroyed everything. The great prostitute. And America have turned their own daughters into prostitutes, have turned their own sons into whoremongers. Here comes the judgment. Everything I told you is prophecy. And guess what? It doesn't matter whether or not you agree or disagree. You'll see. With that, hedge your home, protect your children. Anything that's wrong, separate yourself from it. Judgment is coming. With that, I'm Elder Ricard Shiar, signing out with my YouTube report leading to my Patreon update. If you'd like to call in and talk about what we've just discussed, 515-615-9327. I'm opening up the lines for 40 minutes today, 40 minutes, and then I have to sleep, right? Sabbath is coming in. I love you all. Thanks you for all your support. And if you want more information, tune in here on Wednesday. Fridays, I do updates. Sabbath tomorrow on the same channel. And of course, if you want to really get the information in a very, I would say, organized way of learning this book, sign up for the Hebrew and Bible Academy. Go to historytimes.org. We're only in week 3. And week 3, we're going into the promised seed. And this particular academy will be solely focused on spiritual growth. You don't want to miss it. It's nothing like anything like this in the earth. Hebrew, real-time news, and we're going into Hamas, the news on Hamas this coming Sunday. Okay, and we need to figure out who created Hamas, and we're going to talk about that. Where did it come from? We're going to talk about that this coming Sunday in the academy, as well as, that's right, the promised seed. We thank you. We thank you for all your support. Stay prayed up. Stay in the spirit of the Almighty. God is with you. Christ is with you. Never lose hope. Never lose hope. We're at the very end of this. So all in all, Satan is going to throw everything on the wall, his crap, and don't let it stick to you. Understand it's to divert you or to confuse you to what's going on in the end days. And I'm here through the Spirit of the Most High to do what? Unfold all that confusion so that this world makes sense, so that our people will understand what to do in such a time as this. We're living in the end. We're living at, the end of the world. Shalom. This world, not ours. See you on Patreon. Let's open up the lines. Shalom. Patreon.com/agathering144.
The East is where we're from. The 12 tribes of Israel. In 721 BC, the Assyrian king, he took us down, we fell. With a great escape, we went through the Euphrates. The Lord held the water still. To a land where no mankind dwelt, we went. The 12 tribes of Israel. That's who we be, Manasseh. Vanessa, the Cubans, Ephraim from Puerto Rico, and Valley from the Isles of Hawaii. The Lord is calling back Israel. Zebulon from Panama, Gad, the North American Indians, Simeon, the Dominicans. The highest gathering in Israel. The Arabs and Africans told us. Together our wives and children then sold us. In the belly of these great ships we traveled in fear. By the rivers of Babylon we found our brothers here. A high gatherers in Colombia, Reuben from Australia, Issachar, the Mexicans. A highest gathering